Hello, everybody. Welcome to Friday morning's episode of Trending. It's great to be with you, as always. Brought to you by Iconic Coffee. Head over to shop.iconic.com and use the code TRENDING for 10% off. Richard Willett is the other side of the country. How are you doing, mate?
I'm good, thank you, mate. All well. Bit tired, but as per
That's
usual.
just standard these days, mate. Kids and early morning shows. If you weren't tired, I'd be more worried. Right, so we're going to do the show slightly differently today. We're going to focus on two main themes of the day because there's breaking news stories today across a number of issues, but there's two very key things that are coming into. One's coming into law here in the UK today, which is to do with online harms, which we're going to come to in the second part of the show. But there's been a lot of progress on the stories coming out of Gaza. So many different areas to unpack. So we're going to start with that with the first half of this program. So, Rich, what are we going first?
Well, I think we'll start here in the UK first. So we'll look at Keir Starmer. I mean, this is better late than never, obviously. And your first kind of instinct is to say, should have done that earlier. And all the comments on the post of this particular post from Keir Starmer, what took you so long? You should have done it. And of course they should have done. But again, there's some progress there as well. So I kind of have to kind of balance it out a little bit. But of course, this should have never have got this far. Obviously, that shouldn't really need to be said. So he's posted, the suffering and starvation unfolding in Gaza is unspeakable, indefensible. So if you've managed to stay alive from some of the funding from the UK that they've sent over, now you're starving. So this is what they put out, this statement, the UK government, Keir Starmer. The suffering and starvation unfolding in Gaza is unspeakable and indefensible. While the situation has been grave for some time, it has reached new depths and continues to worsen. We are witnessing a humanitarian catastrophe. I will hold an emergency call with E3 partners tomorrow where we will discuss what we can do urgently to stop the killing and get people the food they desperately need while putting together all the steps necessary to build a lasting peace. We all agree on the pressing need for Israel to change course and allow the aid that is desperately needed to enter Gaza without delay. It is hard to see a hopeful future in such dark times, but I must reiterate my call for all sides to engage in good faith and at peace, to bring about an immediate ceasefire and for Hamas to unconditionally release all the hostages. We strongly support the efforts of the US, Qatar and Egypt to secure this. We are clear that statehood is the inalienable right of the Palestinian people. A ceasefire will put us on a path to the recognition of a Palestinian state and a two-state solution which guarantees peace and security for Palestinians and Israelis. There's a lot of words in there in terms of agreeing with it, especially the two-state solution. This has never happened. That's not what Israel want, obviously. And Israeli people tend to, but the Israelis government, absolutely not. Now, how did it get this far? Well, it was funded by the West anyway. We know that Hamas was propped up initially by Netanyahu and his party for a problem reaction solution. We know these things. We know October the 7th was clearly allowed to happen. Even the Times of Israel have written articles about how Netanyahu backing and propping up Hamas has backfired. It hasn't backfired. It's done exactly what it's supposed to have done. And this is the level they won't ever go to, is to tell you that it's all orchestrated. Why pivot now when you've done all the harm and damage already? That the place is cleared. You are about to annex it. I think the stories coming out last night that Israel are about to try and annex Gaza. So, which was the plan all along. So the job was done. Now they're trying to save face, in my opinion. What is your call on that?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, it's very easy to condemn something when it's too late to do anything about it. Also in that piece, he talks about a two-state solution. Well, where are the two states? Where are the two states? Gaza has been completely decimated. It's basically a parking lot now. The West Bank has had a series of settlements built in it over the last few decades, which have squeezed the Palestinian land even more. There's heavily armed Israeli citizens in the West Bank that attack local Palestinian farmers, and go ahead and attack citizens and don't get any repercussions for that. They actually get armed. These citizens there of the settlements, they get armed by the Israeli regime. There is no two states. The two states are gone. And that's the point. That, it's very, very easy now to say there's a two-state solution, but where? Where is that land? It doesn't exist. And, well, we all know where it really exists. They've already kind of alluded to that, putting them up in an area of land in northern Saudi Arabia. which I think is probably what will end up happening, because we know what this is all about. If you look at, October 7th in isolation, and you believe the official narrative of it, that, a group of Hamas fighters jumped the border, attacked Israeli civilians and kidnapped people and so on, you believe everything you read in the media, even if you believed everything you read about that day, you still could not justify the Israeli response and what is happening right now. So let's just leave that there. So those people that are still parroting all the official stories of October 7th and believe that this conflict started then, even you surely can't justify what's happening right now and has been happening for the last months on end. Yet then when you take apart the fact that October 7th is not where it began years ago, and October 7th was clearly allowed to happen, and there's so much evidence it was allowed to happen, and the Israelis ignored warnings and reduced security at the border, and allowed that festival to go ahead right next to the border where they were told they shouldn't, and it was debatable the day before whether it was going to go ahead, and it did, and they lowered security, and they didn't react to this border crossing for hours, despite the fact, Israel's a tiny country. They could have got a response there very quickly if they'd have wanted to, but they didn't, because they allowed it to happen. They have then, following on, they have attacked civilians. They have not tried really to work on releasing hostages, hence why there's lots of protests in Tel Aviv by hostage families calling for the release of the hostages, calling for them to try and negotiate a ceasefire to release the hostages, because they haven't wanted to do that. It's not been about that. It's been about destroying Gaza. It's been about prolonging this and prolonging this and prolonging this to the point that there's nothing left. And that's exactly what we've seen. And also, Rich, we talk about how if someone said to you, this is what's going to happen now, if someone said to you, mate, you got to give up everything, you got to give up your house, give up everything, you got to rent this house off the state, and that's the only way you can survive and eat. Right now, you're going to say no, because right now you can say no. Whereas if they destroy you financially, they destroy everything around you, they destroy food supply, they destroy the ability for you to live off your own, on your own, and then they come and offer you the same solution, you're more likely to take it. So pre-October 7th, if they'd have said to the Palestinians, we're going to relocate you to Jordan or northern Saudi Arabia or whatever, there would have been massive resistance to that. Whereas now, there will still be some resistance to that from certain factions. But I imagine the families in Gaza just want to get the hell out of Dodge. They just want some peace. They want to get up in the morning knowing their house is still going to be there. They want to be able to go to the shop and eat. So all of a sudden, again, you've probably created an environment where the resistance to the relocation of them, certainly in large numbers, is going to be significantly lower than it would have been pre-October 7th. Add that, with the fact that Gaza is literally just rubble these days. They dropped more bombs on Gaza in terms of the weight than the 2 atomic bombs that were dropped at the end of the Second World War in Japan. That on a landmass that's like 2 miles by 4 miles or something.
Yeah.
The most densely populated enclave in the world.
Yeah, but there's no way back for Israel at all in terms of their government. There isn't.
I don't think they care either, though, mate, now.
No, of course they don't. They're going for broke now. And as you just said, and a good point is to point out that they're going to offer you this solution to the problem that they've given you in terms of housing, and then you're reliant upon them. You said your house wouldn't be your house now. That was your house then. This is not your house. This is your loaned house from the people that have committed the crimes to you. Now you're beholden to these crooks. Exactly the same is going to happen on a universal basic income level across the rest of the world. It's the same play. They're going to take away what you have, like they're doing with the farms in the UK, of your own, give you something else, which will be a slither of what you've got, communism, basically, and then you're relying on the system. They don't want your independence. So that's what they've done to anyone who's, I don't know if he's lucky enough or unfortunate enough to survive what's gone on over there. I couldn't even imagine, and I don't like to imagine because it's so horrific. These people are demons. And this is why it's so disgusting that someone like RFK Jr., who obviously has something over his head, comes out with this utter, I'm going to swear, horse crap. RFK Jr. accuses Israel Holocaust professor of blood libel for concluding Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. I don't know how this guy sleeps at night. I really don't. What a failure of a human being. Secretary of Health and Human Services Robert F. Kennedy Jr., what a disgrace to the Kennedy name, accused Israeli Holocaust professor Omer Bartov or peddling a blood libel after Bartov penned a New York Times open-ed arguing the war in Gaza is genocide. You don't. What argument? What argument? I don't care what expert comes along. You can call him an expert if you want. He's absolutely a lunatic if he doesn't see that as exactly what it was and is ethnically cleansing a genocide that goes back now to the 1940s. The lengthy essay by Bartov, who teaches Holocaust and genocide studies at Brown University as a world-leading authority on the subject, well, RFK Jr. is going to tell him he's wrong, was published in the Times on July the 15th under the headline, "I'm a genocide scholar, I know it when I see it." In it, the Jewish academic who grew up in a Zionist home and served in the Israeli Defense Force, that's why it's so powerful, because he's flipped on them, my inescapable conclusion has been that Israel is committing genocide against the Palestinian people. Of course, anyone can see that. That's not a debatable issue. I can debate with you about it, but the fact is that it's just a fact. It's what's happened in the reality of the world. You can try and reframe it all you like. It just means you're mentally ill. It's clearly what it is. 2 + 2 is still 4, whether you argue to the death that it's 5. It won't change it. If we both die arguing over what 2 + 2 is 4 or 5, we're still going to be the same result at the end, whether we're alive or not. So these people can go on and on. Now, this is what happens when you go on Jeffrey Epstein's plane a couple of times, isn't it? And then hang around with Rabbi Shmuley. They've got something on him, clearly. And it's the same guys that I've been pointing out for a very long time. You know, he looks dead in the eyes.
Yeah, he does.
It's a disgrace to the name Kennedy, and that's such a shame. And the other Kennedys weren't perfect. Of course, they weren't with human beings, and they were clearly used as well along the lines of JFK. The symbology is there. Obviously, he was killed, but he is such a disgrace. His dad was in with a Chabad lot as well. So what's the point? Just tell you the truth and then take the consequences. Now you're old enough.
I agree completely, mate. The problem is, and there's Kennedy Jr. is one name of many. You can add a load of other people who people have nailed their colours to the mast to. You can add, Rupert Lowe in this country, who's replied to that tweet by Starmer with that statement this morning saying someone's scared about the Muslim vote. Mate, you're a disgrace. If anyone thinks you're alternative, you're not. You're an absolute disgrace. Richard Tice, you're a disgrace. Nigel Farage, you're a disgrace. Donald Trump, you're a disgrace. All of them. Avi, whatever his name is, Yamini, the Rebel News guy, who tweeted something about the French that are going to recognise a Palestinian state. That's the story that's breaking this morning. First G7 country to do so. Said they should carve out a bit of the French Riviera to give to the Palestinians as a state, and that America and Israel will win. They always win. Imagine tweeting something like that and pretending to work for an organisation that's alternative. Rebel, nothing rebel about you, mate. You're an absolute disgrace. And this is the problem. Everything here has been made about Muslims and Jews. It's not. It's got nothing to do with race or culture or religion. It's to do with flipping moral compasses. You're killing children and you're supporting that. I don't care if they're Muslims, if they're Jews, if they're Christians, if they're Hindus. Can we stop killing children, please? And can we stop supporting that? And stop with this absolute pathetic attitude that it's all Hamas's fault. Okay, well, if it's all Hamas's fault and that's provable, then let foreign journalists in to prove the fact that you're right then. But you don't, because you're not right. You're lying. All you're doing is lying.
And even if it was, which it isn't, there's so much evidence to the contrary that they were propped up by the West. Yeah. They were. It's a fact that
they're still sat in Qatar, all the leadership.
And exactly. And what happened with ISIS, Al-Qaeda? Who funded them initially? Who armed them initially? You get your proxy army in there and you have them turn on you when you need to go in there and destroy the place. That's how it works. It's phishing. It's the same thing. You've dropped the bait in there. You are funding them. You funded them in the first place. Let's get past this nonsense. They are armed by the West, funded and controlled by the West as an excuse to go in. It's the Hegelian dialect, problem, reaction, solution, as your dad says. It's the oldest trick in the book. Time to grow up.
Yeah, it is. I find this really difficult to not get into the realms of pure hatred because, I try to not go there because I try to not let these people have such power over me that they bother me that much. But when you turn on the news every single morning and you see stories. I mean, you could go to any news site today and pick a story at random about this conflict, and it's going to make you sit there and want to burst into tears. You know, there's stories about medics that are saying the IDF are using Palestinian kids for target practice, and they're shooting them in specific places like it's a game. You got pictures of kids that are starving. 1 in 5 kids in northern Gaza are malnourished and struggling to just get through another day. You've got a woman a Palestinian woman who's done a piece who's pregnant, saying, I hope my baby stays in here for as long as possible. I don't want them born into this. I mean, it's beyond abhorrent what is happening, and the fact that not only are people not calling it out in large numbers, the fact that there's people apparently on our side look to, actively supporting it, actively saying it's good. What is wrong with people? Everything is not as black and white as you want to make it. You can look at the channel and people coming across illegally and people getting up to no good in the UK and say that's wrong and want something done about that and want a proper border policy and want foreign criminals deported and want to know who's coming into your country. You can want that. I want that. But you can also look at what's happening in Gaza, and just because those people that are getting killed might be of the same faith in many cases as the people coming across the channel, you can look at that and go, that's absolutely disgusting what's happening. I can't compute how people see everything as so black and white, they can't separate the two.
Because they haven't done the research into separating the two. So those of the same faith, as we say, are not of the same faith. They're under the same banner of the same faith. They're pretending to be of the same faith. If you do the bloody research and look into these things, you'll realise that they're not of the same faith at all. At the deep roots of what these people are actually doing, they're hijacked the faith, using the faith and inverting the faith of these people, and then using them as a shield. They hide within the context of these faiths. They are not practicing the faith. Obviously, these faiths on their surface level, most people are good people, need to have a belief in something other than themselves to, calm their own anxieties about what we're doing here. That's what the faith's about. Really deep at the core, these faiths have been infiltrated, especially the three Abrahamics, by something entirely different. And if you want to be ignorant about that, this will carry on. Or go and do the research and have a nuanced, balanced understanding of what you're talking about.
I think any belief system that makes you want to hate or oppress someone else because they may share a different one, just say that out loud and look in the mirror and think, is that fair? Is that right? Is that how I want to live my life? It's absolutely insane. I don't care what you believe. Believe what you want, mate. Just don't impose it on me. Don't impose it on anyone else that doesn't want it imposed on them. It's just mad. Across the board, it's just absolutely bonkers as far as I'm concerned. And it's the biggest source of control of humanity and has been for millennia, religion in its various different forms. And even the modern day religions of wokeism and climate change and all those things that I would put under the same umbrella, they are controlling people's minds to the point that they are literally behaving utterly insane across the board. You can apply that to any faith and any different religion. If you believe something fundamentally to the point that you believe you're right and therefore everyone else is wrong, then who cares who you oppress and attack? That's literally the attitude of some of these people. It's utterly insane. But you're right, Rich. When you strip back those fault lines, you strip back religion, you strip back all of those things, most people, there's obviously exceptions, most people just want to get on in life. Most people want to feed their families. Most people want to have a nice time. Most people want to experience the great things that this planet has to offer. We've had it conditioned to be apart from each other. I think that's a massive reason why there's mental health crisis across the world. We've been conditioned to be apart from each other. We've been conditioned to ignore what we see with our own eyes. And also we've been programmed and conditioned in these various different belief systems and cultural belief systems that we have to disagree to the point that we can't get on in life when we can. Ultimately, we can. It's just a lot of mess in the middle, in the way, which, that's why we're here. We're trying to get rid of that. Right, let's move on to another story, which I say intertwines, and it does slightly. So the online harms bill here in the UK comes into law today, comes into being, if you like. Now, we've said for a while that, particularly on the subject of Israel, you couldn't say anything about Israel for years and years and years on social media without being censored, deleted, or in some people's cases, don't know who, being banned from pretty much everywhere in the world. And having, your meetings and events attacked and censored, and to the point that you have to hide your venues till the last minute. We've dealt with that here for years. But suddenly in the last year, all of a sudden, you can say whatever you want. And there has been people on there going so far and so extreme that we have said, I think we've covered it on this program, that that's leading somewhere. That's being allowed to happen for a reason, so they can bring down the iron fist and say we can't allow these sort of things to happen. And we've also spoken a lot about this online harms bill and how the sales pitch of it to protect kids online is exactly that. It's a sales pitch. It's certainly not what it's meant to do. It's meant to be the starting point, because this organisation, Ofcom, that will regulate this industry, it was started by Tony Blair. So that should tell you everything you need to know. If it's started by him, it's certainly not for the benefit of people in the UK. So it's going to start probably not too aggressively. It's going to start probably dealing with content that most people would probably agree. And then it's going to just get more and more and more and more power and more strict and more aggressive over time, until the conversation we're having right now, Rich, would be too hot for it. And we would end up having to figure out ways to get around that. I know that's coming. We both know that's coming. So one of the key stories today, or one of the key sales pitch for this, is the porn industry, right? So there's now, as of today, porn websites will have age verification systems where you will have to verify your age before you can go on them, right? Currently, from what I'm reading, you go on and you just say if you're over 18 or not. There's no way of them proving or disproving that. So one of the stories is that they're going to basically make you have to upload either a passport, driving license, something like that, alongside a photo to verify your age. Now, a lot of people would listen to that and go, yeah, I agree with that. That's good. We shouldn't let 12-year-old kids see violent, aggressive pornography, because, there's so many potential damaging elements to that. And I would agree, completely agree with that. Across the board, I think both girls and boys seeing that kind of stuff is not going to be good. It's not going to be good for their self-worth. It's not going to be good for their image of what sex looks like. It's not going to be good for their image of what a relationship looks like. It's not going to be good for their image of what the other sex looks like and how they should behave and respect and stuff. I agree. I don't think you should be, seeing stuff like that. But then I would say that's the responsibility of the parents ultimately to kind of keep an eye on your children and educate them and understand that they're going to start asking questions around that age, and that's the parents' job. It's not the state's job. But most people, I would say, would read that story and go, I can agree with that. I can get on board with having somebody that regulates that type of content online, right? But that's not where it stops. That's where it starts. And the key is when they talk about things like harmful content and hateful content. So I'll ask you, Rich, how would you define what harm and what hate is? Because I guarantee it's probably different from the guy down the road and the guy the other side of the road and the woman in the shop. So therefore, how can one body, Ofcom, define what it is to the point that they decide what's allowed and what's not?
Well, the point is what the initial kind of center of it is who they're trying to protect. What are they trying to protect? And not what they say they're trying to protect. As we say, they say they're trying to protect children, and we'd all agree with that. Of course we would. But that's not what they're trying to protect, is it? So the harmful content, hateful content, will be whatever they deem directed at their ideology.
Absolutely, 100%. And I think this is a really interesting point, because this isn't black and white. That's the difference with us and with Iconic. We're not black and white. We will look at everything disparatively, and we will look at everything objectively. So, for example, Rich, when me and you were at school, not in the same school and not in the same decade, we'll add, when you got home, if you were getting bullied, if you were getting stick at school, when you got home, it stopped. Your parents knew you were safe if you were inside your own home. They knew that outside influences and outside abuse and things like that, they weren't a reality. If you were in your own home, if you were in your bedroom playing with your toys or whatever, they knew you were safe. Since this explosion in technology, particular smartphones and social media, that's now not the case. There has been a number of stories of teenagers being found hung in their bedrooms because they were getting abuse online and their parents weren't aware of it. That's been, I remember a film when I was a teenager called Kidulthood, which had a scenario around that. A girl was getting bullied at school. Her parents didn't even know. And she was found in the morning in her bedroom. So all of a sudden now, there is a question about protecting kids online. There is. I do completely understand that. And I understand as a parent, as we both are, okay, our kids are too young to worry about these sort of things now, but they will do one day. And particularly, I would imagine for parents of girls, I would imagine this is probably slightly more pressing. I understand there is probably some kind of call or some kind of conversation had about protecting children online. Absolutely there is. But that's not what this is about, and that's the key. This organisation is the organisation that right through 2020 and 2021 stopped you at home getting objective and balanced information on what was going on, whether it was about COVID mask mandates, whether it was about lockdowns, whether it was about true statistics, whether it was about the vaccine and its safety and efficacy. This is the organisation that stopped you getting that information and actively censored anyone that was trying to put out a balancing side of the argument. Do you really think now, all of a sudden, that organisation give two shits about protecting your children online? They obviously don't. They are there to protect the interests of the agenda and to silence anyone who dares to question it or ask anything that may expose it. So I'm not going to sit here and say everything should be online. There should be no censorship. There should be no anything. There should be no conversation about protecting children online. I don't believe that. I think there should be a conversation. But I think it's a conversation that should be had by parents and community leaders and done on a localised level. I don't think it should be the job of the government. I don't believe that whatsoever, because governments do not have the interests of the people at heart. Certainly not organisations like Ofcom, who you only got to look back through their history at the people they have attacked and censored, and it's anybody who asks a question. Anybody who asks a question about an official narrative, Ofcom complains, Ofcom sanctions, Ofcom does this. They're not there to help. So let's just get rid of that to start with, and then let's start the conversation from there. What's your take, mate? Do you think there's... I'm not going to sit here and have all the answers, but I do think there is a conversation to be had about protecting children from abuse, from very extreme content that's going to radicalize them into violent behavior or into, trafficking rings and things like that, and being groomed and so on, and child pornography. I do believe there is a conversation to be had about how we can protect kids from seeing and being exposed to that sort of stuff. But this conversation never seems to be about that, does it?
No, and there's an extreme difference between being bullied online on Facebook, which is horrific in itself, than being allowed to go on adult pornography websites. Yeah. I mean, you've got to have some sensibility about the extremes here. The ID on that, I've got a problem with. Absolutely. Makes total sense. It's an adult website. If you were going to go into a nightclub, you'd have to prove ID. If you were going to go into a strip club, ID. If you're going to go into a casino, ID. Makes sense. It's an adult world you're going into. But then again, where they're going to cross that over, as you say, the digital ID into everything, and we see this, that's what they always do. They kind of, and we've seen the same in Gaza. If you want to have a look at that, where they move the borders, slowly encroaching, they slowly encroach on your life and on your liberties. This is about centralizing power. It always is about centralizing power. So there's that point, and then there's the other point. I covered a story a little while ago, about a month ago, about a young boy who took his own life because the AI chatbot he was talking to encouraged him to do so. That was horrific. So we've got the AI element coming in here, which is going to be replacing, like, it's your best friend. People like Ray Kurzweil are coming out with, and Peter Thiel. It'll be your best friend. It will never leave you. That sort of thing is just as dangerous, maybe even more so. So, how can you go and have a go at a chatbot? So there's other elements. The world is changing vastly. But I think really what the the solution in a way to that is to build stronger people, stronger children, stronger adults for the future, who just go, I don't care what you say. It's my opinion is my opinion. You have to build your own strength up. You don't, when you're, I suppose when you're at war, if you look at it in the analogy of having a castle, you don't just try and kind of like calm down the enemy. They're going to be there. This is life, unfortunately. You build your walls stronger. You become stronger people.
Yeah.
And that's where I think is the answer to that is the world's changing. We need to become stronger people in terms of how we adapt to those changes. And that's always going to be the way. So we need to adapt, and our children need to adapt to that, because life is hard. It's not going to be like Olam Habar, the new world order, or somewhere over the rainbow. It can be hard and it can be difficult, but we're tough people. We're tough beings. We've been here for millions of years. We know what we're doing. So I think we need to give human beings the credit to adapt as well. And that's something that religions don't do. That's something that they don't want you doing, is finding your own self-worth and your own self-strength. I mean, everybody has something someone takes the mickey out of. Everybody. So in the world, everybody will be bullied in some way, manner or form at some point in their life. And you can, it's unfortunate. And then people doing the bullying, they're often bullied themselves. It's an unfortunate thing. So what are you in control of? I'm in control of my reaction to it. And 100%. You're at my reaction and my walls, and I won't let you in. As far as I'm concerned, I won't let you in. And that's all you can do. With the bullies and the Zionist bullies that are saying online you're all anti-Semitic. Oh, say what you want. You can live in your own deluded bubble. Go around in a circle. Because I'm not trying to change your behaviour. I'm trying to change my behaviour. And my behaviour to you is sod off. I don't care what you think. And that, I think, is probably more important than trying to go down the digital ID route and all of that stuff. That we know that's the inverse of what they're saying. Just build stronger people. That's the best way forward, I think.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something in that. So last night when I read the story about Hulk Hogan, right, I started watching a few clips from some of the old Rocky films, particularly Rocky 3 that he was in. And up popped do you remember the brilliant clip in Rocky 5 when he says to his son about, the world's not all sunshine and rainbows. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward and keep getting up. And that really, what you were saying there made me think a lot about that building resilience, building that strength to take those hits, to take that and still get up, still keep putting one foot in front of the other. Because you're right, there's always going to be people out there that want to bring you down. There'll be people in your personal life, people in your family, people that you meet at school. There'll be people that are trying to bring you down. You can't always dictate that, but you can absolutely dictate how you react to it. You can dictate how you respond to it. And I think this is where, as parents, we have an enormous responsibility, probably bigger than ever before, I would say, to educate our kids in the right way. Because what you mentioned there about Peter Thiel and about AI being your best friend and about that encouragement for kids to interact with technology as if it's human. Well, those kids who are perhaps being bullied, those kids who are perhaps subject to some not very nice things in school, that struggle to maybe build relationships, that have this image that kids are horrible and real people aren't very nice, so therefore I'm going to regress into the world of technology to get my interaction. And technology will be gladly there to provide that, but at whose control? I think that's so dangerous, and I think we live in a world now where that's going to become more and more of a factor in young children and teenagers. So it's so important, I think, that parents, you keep an eye on your kids and you educate them and you check in with them and you make sure they're okay and you really try and put the effort in to educate them on technology and on what's necessary, on what's not necessary, on where a good level is, on where a too much is. And because I think we live in a world where technology is becoming more and more used, more and more controlled, and more integrated into our lives, particularly in the young. Every single day, every single week, every single month, there's a new technology that everyone wants. And I think kids without that knowledge that actually, the world isn't about technology. Technology should add to the things that are in your life that are offline. That's where the real things are that matter. That's where the beautiful scenery is. That's where the interaction with people is. That's where the true love is. It's not online. It can enrich your life. It can help you. But if it defines it, you've got a massive problem. And that's where I think we have a massive job, bigger than ever before, because what we're seeing now is unprecedented. It's completely unprecedented. This essentially this new force that's trying to take over people's minds in the form of technology. That's never happened before, certainly not in known history. So we've got a big job to do, mate. Big job to do. Because, you know, online has a place, but it shouldn't be where everything is. And it is for so many of these kids. So it's very, very important that we educate. And also, just to finish, mate, there's a really key point here. Do you remember the phrase in school, you must have heard this as well, that parents used to say about, you know, kids are horrible, they say horrible things, they say nasty things. Well, a lot of that is because kids don't understand the repercussions of their actions and their words at times. You know, you're a kid, you don't necessarily sit and think. I'm sure we've all said things at school. I'm sure we've all had things said to us at school that as adults you wouldn't say. And if you saw the person who said it to you when you were 10 today, they probably wouldn't say it to you now, because you have that understanding of the repercussions of your actions, of your words. You have empathy. As a kid, you don't necessarily have those emotions checked down yet, because you're still learning, you're still evolving. So again, if you are a parent of a child who maybe is being bullied, or you're a parent of a child who you are worried is bullying others, sitting down, educating, listening, talking, helping them understand what things mean and how they affect others and so on. I mean, I imagine if you sat down with your kid who's being bullied and explained to them really articulately how the person bullying them is weak as hell, because bullies are weak, bullies are cowards, we all know that phrase, then they're going to probably think quite differently, aren't they? About the fact that they're being bullied by somebody, when they're looking at that person, probably thinking initially they're all powerful and they're this big person and they're this, that, when actually they're just a tiny, pathetic person. Ignore them. Yeah. What the hell? Who cares what their opinion is? It's a very different way of looking at it. And I think as a parent, we have probably the hardest generation now to raise, to educate, and to warn and to guide. Probably the hardest than ever before. It's certainly in peacetime.
Yeah, it's going to be, it's a change. It's a massive changeover with these kids. They've got the technology now. And as you say, bullies are cowards. And usually you can sit down and you can say to them, well, if they're cowards, then what are they scared of? Who are they scared of? Usually it's you, to be honest. They're scared of you, you know, or jealous of you, envious of you, which makes them fearful of you because you've got something they haven't. And they've got probably problems going at home. It doesn't excuse their behaviour. But as kids, as you say, I look back at school and think some of the stuff I said to people I still regret now. Not few and far between, but as you get older, you're like, bloody hell. But as you say, you don't have the mental capacity to really put it in the context as you do when you're older. That's just part of, you know, your mind expanding, you're growing up, your brain expanding biologically and spiritually and emotionally. But, you know, it would be to build stronger people emotionally. We do. And I think a lot of this woke nonsense was to weaken a lot of people emotionally and tear them down into the point where they're just emotional about every single thing. I'm not talking about extremes again. I'm not talking about being psychotic and going the other way. But there is a balance. There is a stoicism in the middle where you go, it's a strength for you. It comes from you. It's in control of you. There's a line in the Shawshank Redemption when they put him to prison for killing his wife and he never did it. He said, there's part of me that they can't get to. And there isn't everyone.
Absolutely. If I had school again, I'd have chinned a lot more people. I'd have stood up for myself a lot more. I got a load of stick in school, as you can probably imagine, especially and also obviously you're too young to understand and explain certain things, because and also what was sad, I remember my mum used to say this all the time, is the kids that are giving you stick weren't they're not getting it from themselves. It's their parents telling them, because they're the same age as you. They don't understand this, that, and the other either. But yeah, I'd have stood up for myself and headbutted a few more people. But funnily enough, occasionally bump into people when I go back to the Isle of Wight I went to school with, who gave me a load of stick, who now come and say nice things about what we're doing. So swings and roundabouts.
Well, there you go.
It all comes back round. Right, Rich, thanks for your time, mate. The audiences of Trending are very, very in for a treat next week, aren't they? Because me and Gareth are both away. So they've got you for 5 days in a row, Richard.
I don't know about a treat, and by the time we get to Thursday, I may look like I've just not seen the light of day for a while. But we'll get through it, and you'll come along with me and help me get through the week, and we'll do it together. It'll be fine.
Absolutely. All right, I'll be back on Monday the 4th of August, as will Gareth. Until then, you got Rich next week, so be kind to him. Have a fantastic weekend, everybody. Enjoy the heat wave if you're here in the UK. Don't read the news. It's brilliant. Goodbye.